What's up, y'all? It's Afueko. I hope you're having a great 2021 so far. I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, but I do believe in constant self-improvement. One thing that I'm constantly focused on is my productivity, and because I code a lot, being a fast debugger is really important. The one comment I always get about my coding style is that I move really fast. One of the reasons why I move really fast is because I understand the underlying system, which allows me to debug really quickly. So in this video, I'm going to give you some tips on how to improve your debugging skills and make you a faster coder. Let's get into it. First, let me explain the example that I'll be going through. I'm not actually going to be explaining what I'm doing in the example, but I'm going to use some of the problems that arose when I was coding the example to explain some of these tips on debugging. For this example, I exported my calendar data into an ICS format and then converted it to a CSV, and then I analyzed the most common tasks over the past few years to see could I gauge kind of how productive I was during certain time periods. So my example to improve your debugging skills is to debug an example script that is meant to improve my time management. This is getting kind of meta, but let me just get into my first tip.
Here we go again. Here we go again. Here we go again.
The first thing that I would suggest while you're debugging is to look into the structure of the data that you're going to be using and also look into documentation of the libraries that you're going to be using. If you understand everything that you're working with, you'll be much better equipped to debug any issues. The things you want to make sure that you understand is the syntax or workflow of your environment, whether that be the command line, just using the Python language, or any development environment, as well as the structure of your data, i.e. if it's a CSV file, what the different field names are, if it's an XML file, how do you parse it, things like that. I'll be working in pure Python. I exported my calendar data to an ICS format, and then I use this Python library that I had to install to convert it from ICS to CSV format. I actually ran into a few issues that required me having to upgrade my library, but this actually brings me into my second tip.
It's gonna be a little weird, but we can make it anyways. You know how it is. I hate myself. Okay. What's up, bitch? Why you tryna talk to me like I ain't shit? Hold up, bitch. Why you arguing? Why you tryna tell them that I ain't it? Hold up, bitch.
My second tip is to know what to search for. Let's be real. Even the most experienced programmers can have blind spots in any language that they're working with. Everybody has their specific experience, and it's quite rare to find someone who knows everything. But we're lucky to be in 2021, in which we have search engines, which allow us to find anything at the tip of our fingers. So when you're debugging, understanding what to search for when you run into problems is really important. Typically, if you get an error message, you can copy and paste parts of that error message and search for it, and it'll typically tell you what the answer is. So that's actually what I did. I copied and pasted the error message that I got, and I put it in Google, and literally the first example told me what to do, and I made some adjustments for my particular system and solved the problem really quickly. If you don't actually have an error message, it's important to include the context of what you're looking for. For example, at some point I had to figure out how to parse dates and times in my script, and I searched for how to parse date and time, but I didn't include that I was using Python. So the first thing that popped up was a .NET documentation. So including the context of what you're searching for is really important in getting the right results. You also don't want to get the wrong advice, which can lead you in the wrong direction, and you'll spend a lot more time debugging.
You gotta understand. You gotta see my point of view. You gotta understand. See my point of view.
My next tip is to have structured development and testing. While this doesn't actually mean that you need to have unit tests, I think there is definitely a way that you should structure your development that allows you to code faster. The way that I designed this program, I first wrote a script that had a couple of functions that defined kind of the basic things that I thought I would need to do in the program, and then I edited that template script, filling out the functions one by one and kind of seeing what the results were of each of those functions to make sure that I was doing the right thing. I also created a fake data file to work with because rather than parsing the entirety of my data file, which I didn't really know if it would be too large to parse quickly, I created a CSV file that matched the structure of my original file with only a few events, which allowed me to work really fast with some of those functions. After I created this structure, I started implementing things. And this is where I get into my last tip.
It's okay. You know how it is. Let's get it. Where is Marcel? Where is Marcel?
My last tip is to learn how to understand the stack traces. Oftentimes when we have error messages, we get really long stack traces, and those can be really confusing. When I had my first C class my junior year of undergrad, I would literally get pangs of anxiety when I saw the bright red errors that would pop up whenever I had bugs in my code. Getting used to those errors and understanding how to walk through and deal with those is really important in learning how to debug quickly. Stack traces get much easier to deal with the more that you encounter them, so if you're struggling with it, don't worry, you'll get used to them. Stack traces will include the exact line of your code that you need to go in and fix to fix your bug, but oftentimes the actual problem is buried really deep within the stack trace and you might not see the error message directly. This can happen when you use while loops, recursion, or functions that use a lot of threading, so be careful when you're using these types of functions, and if you are, try to write unit tests to test every portion of your application. Edge cases are also really important when debugging those kinds of programs. So the script that I wrote basically looked through my calendar data, sorted my events by name, and told me what the most common events were. From August 2020 to now, the most common things that I did were go to therapy, and I actually had this workout scheduled with my friends that I never actually went to, which was interesting. So I guess we see where my priorities have been. This was just a toy example, but I'm kind of interested in seeing more analytics on my calendar data. I guess that's it for this video. Oh, wait, no, let's do a conclusion. My first tip, spend some time looking at the documentation and the structure of the data so you understand what you're working with, which makes it a lot faster to debug your program. Second tip, understand what keywords to search for. Sometimes you won't have a stack trace that's simple enough to copy and paste into your search bar to find the answer. So understanding the context of your problem is important when searching for answers to your bugs. Honestly, a lot of developers spend the majority of their time, aside from debugging, searching for answers to their problem. In my opinion, understanding what to search for is the most important thing when debugging. My third tip, develop a structured development and testing environment. What I typically do is write boilerplate functions for my code before I actually code, and then fill in the functions as I develop, making sure that each piece works before I add something new. And my last tip, get comfortable with the stack traces. I know that stack traces can seem scary at first, and it might seem difficult to figure out what exactly your bug is, but by understanding the structure of the stack traces and actually the structure of your actual code, you'll be able to navigate them more easily, and it'll get much easier solving your bugs as time goes on. That's it for this video. I hope you all having a great 2021 so far, even though it's only been a little bit of time. Comment down below, what coding skills are you trying to improve this year? That's it for this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Later.
I wanna take you home to mama. I wanna buy you diamond rings. Make sure that you're happy. Show you everything.